You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, we are part of the CLNS family of podcasts. Make sure you give every one of those guys a follow. They've done a great job. There's actually a whole live stream going on tomorrow night at 7:30 with Doug Codd and Andrew Callahan. Make sure you tune into that for a good cause. There tomorrow night. But we are here to talk about the draft. As always, your guy, Pat Lane, here with my man, Matt St. Jean. And Matt, draft weekend we've been anticipating it for months. It's finally over. And here we are. And we're here to break down what we thought. I think we have very different opinions of the draft, but that's what's going to make it fun.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting show to go through this. And, I do think, as we start evaluating this, it's worth mentioning here that, our evaluations are mostly going to be based off of, the values of how they worked the draft board and the players there. And there's always going to be room for a lot of movement because, especially days 2 and 3 of the draft, there is a ton of unpredictability with player outcomes. And also for a draft like this, when you have the number 4 overall pick, hitting on that first pick and hitting on that second pick kind of become your most important things.
Yep.
What you do on late day 2 into day 3 can be what makes you a winner. But if you're whiffing on day 1 and early day 2, that's what's going to make it hard to compete. So nailing those picks ends up being, your most important part of this whole thing.
Well, and that's the biggest part of it, right? Is that not everyone, but the majority of people are going to hit a good player, at least a serviceable player in the first round. The good teams, the great teams, are the teams that find that talent definitely on day 3. Definitely on day 2, and then even sometimes on day 3 as well. And that's what separates the good teams from the bad teams. And, you can't buy a team. This isn't Major League Baseball. Cannot buy a team. You have to draft a good team. And if you don't do that, you have no chance of being successful. And so, hopefully the Patriots have done that, but we'll get into that. But a bunch of people checking in. Kevin T, what's up, sir? Thanks for coming through. Nelson here. Appreciate you coming through. Firefighter 49. Some new faces here. So hello, everyone. Thanks for coming in. TD's here. Brian's here. Of course, Nagan's here. We love that. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes today. I don't know. Do you want to just jump right into it? There's a lot of stuff to talk about. The Bill Belichick thing. I don't know if we're going to get to the Bill Belichick interview thing. The Bill Belichick interview thing is crazy. Jeff Ulbricht's son. That's wild. What a story, dude.
I think we're going to have a number of miscellaneous items to wrap up with tonight.
My goodness. The Ulbricht story is crazy. How he still has a job is unbelievable to me. I don't understand. But we'll see. But my goodness. So
should we start? I mean, we already gave our grades on days 1 and 2. Do we want to start with day 3 and then just go from there?
We can. You want to start with day 3? We can start with day 3 if you'd like, and then work our. Well, no, we're doing a full draft recap. I think we should start at the beginning, and then we'll talk about day 3, because it's then we're going to go. First of all, day 3 wasn't great. There were a few picks that were great in day 3. The end of day 3 was rough. So we'll get into day 3, but let's start at the beginning. Okay. We talked about it. We can maybe talk a little bit less on some of these guys because we've already talked about day 1 and day 2, but we can go from there. So anyways, I got these cool little things from my dad from the hall. So these things are here, which is kind of cool. And so it's just like it's a thing, right? Like this, look at that. So round 1, number 4 overall, offensive tackle from LSU, Will Campbell. I we've gone over it over and over and over and over again. Regardless of what you think, I just don't know what else the Patriots could have done here. I know that they could have taken Amon Membu, and we've talked about this, how it seemed like Membu did not want to move over to the left side. And really, I don't think could move over to the left side. I mean, look, maybe I'm wrong about that, but like if he could have, they would have moved him over to the left side, I would think. And so if he was unwilling to go over to the left side, but now you don't have a choice. You have to keep him on the right, and the Patriots aren't drafting a right tackle at number 4 overall. I actually thought what the Jets did with Membu was smart because they have a left tackle already. I do think Membu is going to be a very good right tackle, but he's a right tackle. You needed a left tackle. And so, so anyways, I just, that's the way I looked at it. I love what he brings. I think one of the big thing, and one of the things that you'll see is a staple of what's going on, and something that revolved around all the picks that they made, is that they have a real focus on what's going on in the locker room, not just on the field. And they want to build a culture here. And I think that Campbell is a guy that's a culture tone setter. And that doesn't necessarily matter. You're not drafting a guy for that at number 4 overall. But I think when you combine all that stuff together, I just think it was the right pick. And I think that he will be good. But again, that's just me. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Patriot, like Will Campbell is not my favorite selection. The Patriots kind of got stuck in no man's land here. In an alternate timeline, if the Patriots are able to trade back to 10, I think they still get him, because I think the Saints liked Banks, and obviously the Jets liked Membu. That was the guy that fit what they were looking for. So, if you're able to move back to 10, get draft capital, and get Campbell there, I think you feel like over the moon about that. The board just doesn't fall that way for you. Teams know that you're in no man's land where you are, and that you're gonna that's gonna be who you're picking,
right,
at 4 or at 10. So why would they have to? You look at through the lens of an Ashton Genty trade up that was talked about leading up to the draft. There's no need to go up to 4 for him when you can just go up to 5.
Correct.
So, and then obviously that doesn't even end up happening.
Right.
So I have come to terms with the Campbell pick, with some of the more knowledge that's come out about Membu. It's just not like it's a tough year to have this pick.
Yeah.
Because I think it's conceivable there's a world he's the 3rd or 4th best left tackle in this class. Conceivable there's a world he's not a left tackle at all. If he ends up being a good right tackle for you or a good left guard, that's good. They need good players on this offensive line. It's just a tough spot. I think if you look at it, once we go forward a couple of years, then you look back on, Campbell compared to other guys taken with the number 4 overall pick. I think he's probably going to end up being one of the worst players in that spot, which is, nothing they can do about that. I just, I like some of the arguments about Mason Graham there, although I like Mason Graham a lot. I ended up having Graham and Campbell in the same tier, so I really can't complain about that too much. And Will Johnson even was someone we talked about on here at one point, not knowing how bad the medicals really were. If we'd known when we were having those cornerback discussions back in January, whenever that was, about could we take him? That's never in it. And I liked a lot of Tedero McMillan stuff. I can't put him above Will Campbell. So it's a weird spot where I did not necessarily love Campbell, the prospect, that much. But, great person, great for your locker room, and someone who I think should raise the floor for your team. And I push back on the idea of him being a super safe pick, because he is a guy who's an athletic outlier at the position, and someone who might end up having to switch positions. And once that happens, who knows, what's going to happen with him. But there's a lot to buy into the like. So, I believe I gave the pick a C+, which might sound a little bit harsh, but that's also if C is average, this is a slightly above average pick, because addressing need, he's a person you like, all the stuff we talked about there.
Right. And I gave it a B+. when I went through it, and I think I love him. I do. I'm a huge fan of him.
Yeah.
But there are concerns. He's not a perfect prospect. It's not like I'm sitting here saying, "Oh my God, like we got Travis Hunter." Like we didn't get Travis Hunter. You know, we didn't get Abdul Carter. Like we didn't. And so I can look at that and say there are some questions. And you know, that's the way it goes. And so that's why I gave it to him. You know, I gave it to him as a as that. And by the way, Commander Ray says he's hold on. He isn't an athletic outlier. He's a size outlier. That's completely false. That's like 1,000% false. He is definitely a size outlier. He is also an athletic outlier. He's got like one of the best RAS scores for a tackle in the last 25 years. Him and Armand Membu. I think there's 5 guys that weighed in at like over 330 pounds that ran like a sub 540. 5. And he's one of them. So like he is an athletic outlier. He's also a size outlier, but he is also an athletic outlier.
When it's the semantics too, when I say athletic outlier, I'm saying what his body is like. I'd also say like the Travis Hunter stuff, you know, I think on paper at least would have considered trading up for Travis Hunter because I think he would have been that good for us.
Right.
Not giving up what it ended up taking to get him. That
no.
Like, and I love the move for Jacksonville. I think that's exciting. I think it's exciting for the NFL. I don't know if that's really good. Like, I don't know if that was a smart move. I don't know if that was a wise move. It's fun though.
Yeah. Well, and I'm very happy that he's on Jacksonville and not on Cleveland. Because I think Cleveland just stinks. And you know, what are you gonna do? That's and so Jacksonville probably will stink too, but it should be more fun. You know, he's got Trevor Lawrence. So
but yeah, the Campbell pick to me, you know, at pick number 4, you're always looking to hit a home run, and they got on base.
Yeah.
And that's
right.
It's fine. It's just not like if only it could have been Joe Alt this year.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is you weren't hitting a home run with anyone. That's really the issue. You know what I mean? When
I think the problem is in a draft like this, odds are somebody in those next 5 picks drafted a player who's going to be better than Will Campbell. You just don't know that now. Like You're not going to know that for 3 years.
Right.
So it's like you can't. It's the type of judgment you can only make in hindsight. But I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple years we look back and it's like, yeah, Campbell's a good player. Man, wish we could have had that guy instead.
Yeah, and that is certainly possible, right? And that happens for a ton of picks throughout the draft process for the Patriots, and that will happen for other guys as well. And so,
that's just weighing risk and reward. You know, they could have gone for a riskier pick there. I do think I'm glad they didn't. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, let's get to the next pick. Oh boy, because Matt did not like this one. It has nothing to do with his bias, by the way. Round 2, running back.
Can I go?
Travion Henderson at 38.
Can I lead off here?
You can lead off. Let's do it.
I want to lead off first by saying in no way is my grade of a D on this on Pat's Pulpit reflective of who Travion Henderson is as a player. I really like him. I think he's fun. He's explosive. He's going to help you out. I just, I think if you look at this draft and then put into context with some of the later picks, like I like some of the defensive line prospects they got on day 3. I think those were awesome moves. And they make this move a little bit better. But you could have had defensive line prospects a full tier, 2 tiers better at this position and at this point in the draft. And passing on that, I think, is tough. Greg Bedard had said, and this is something I think we talked about on the pod in the reaction. We noticed that the Dolphins had traded up to get Savania, and they jumped the Pats for him. And Bedard says he thinks the Patriots were kind of, because there was reportedly an argument in the room, leading up to this pick about who they wanted, and apparently it was between Savania and Henderson. And I mean, all I can say is you get a lot of time there between round 1 and round 2. What we do to look at the board and reset and say, okay, who do we want at this position? Neither one of those players were in the top 5 guys would have wanted at that spot, and all 5 guys that I wanted at pick 38 were still on the board, and they ended up going this direction. So, I think Henderson will be a good player for you. I think he'll help you win football games. I just think that they passed on guys who would have helped you even more.
Right. And by the way, I think that your argument is certainly has a basis, right? There's certainly merit behind it. I think that the biggest thing for me is this, right? The Patriots looked at this class and said, edge is incredibly deep. Wide receiver is incredibly deep. And so because edge and wide receiver are incredibly deep, we can wait on those guys for a little while and get a good value later on. And the running back class was considered extremely deep, right? But I believe it was you that was on this show said, I'm going to push back on that. It's not as deep as everyone thinks. It's not. And so I think
I don't think I was the one that said
maybe
that.
It wasn't you. Someone, I have heard multiple people push back on that because the thing is this: there might have been a lot of depth in the running back class, in the fact that okay, those are serviceable guys. They're guys that could be on a roster. There are playable guys, but they weren't explosive, playmaking, home run hitting guys all over the place. They just weren't. And Trayvon Henderson, in my opinion, was the third best back in this draft. And I don't think it was close. I think he was better than Judkins. And I think that, the Patriots were looking for a guy like this. And I'm not saying he's Jahmyr Gibbs, but someone in the Jahmyr Gibbs mold where you're saying, when this guy touches the ball, it's over. Like, you better get him on the ground because you better spend 3 guys to get him on the ground because it's over if you don't. And the Patriots haven't had a guy like that on the roster in a really long time. And I like Luther Burden a lot, and Matt Waldman was on here and called Luther Burden his wide receiver, his overall wide receiver number 1, even over Travis Hunter. And so I get it. I understand the Luther Burden love. I also understand, Alazarico, which I think I butchered that again. But, for me, I get it. I understand. But I looked at it and said, man, like, this is really, for me, a home run for the offense. And yes, they were guys that may have been more valuable. Jahmyr Gibbs got taken at number 12. Nobody's questioned that pick. No one. They questioned it at the time. Nobody's questioning that pick. And you can say, because they had this guy, and because they had that guy, and because they had this guy. I'm trying to make Drake May the best player on the team. I'm trying to make Drake May a top 5 NFL quarterback. If I can give him a weapon like Jahmyr Gibbs, that's going to go a long way to doing that.
Well, first of all, I like Henderson. I don't think he's in the same tier as Jahmyr Gibbs as a prospect. I think he's really good. I like him.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he's a second-round running back. Gibbs was a first-round running back. There's a distinction athletically, I think, between those guys as playmakers, even though Henderson's a great athlete. And also when you take the injury history with those guys into account, too. This is going to sound awful out of context. I don't care how good Drake May is. I want to win football games.
Right.
And I think one of the great things I think about having a talent like Drake May is that he can raise the level of the guys around him. So you can one of the reasons the Dynasty era Patriots were so good is that Brady could raise the level of everyone around him. But then you could go heavy drafting defense and make the defense really good. I think you had an opportunity to do that here, and they decided not to. And, I understand it. You're not as good at the running back position as you want to be. It's a spot where, I think in this draft, you kind of have to draft a running back somewhere with where the Patriots are at the position with the guys. I just, both before this draft and in hindsight, I would have rather had a combination of, Nick Scorton at 38 and Dylan Sampson at 106 than what they actually ended up doing at those positions. and not even just those positions, but those draft slots. So, yeah, I know I'm excited to see Henderson out there. Like he makes your team better, but I definitely think the Patriots left some meat on the bone here, and I don't think he was close to the best prospect available. Even like, I don't see any way you can look at the board and say that Henderson was the best player on the board. I feel that way about Savania too at that spot. So definitely got some questions about the way they're viewing and scouting these guys. Wouldn't have hated a guard in general at that spot. I just think that's, you know, and
with the talent on the board, I would have been upset about a guard.
Well, and I think if the board falls a little bit differently there, Henderson or Savania, I'm totally fine with as the pick. I just, man, like I had a first round grade on Scorton. I really liked him as a player, and that's tough.
Right.
This guy would have considered trading up back into the first four.
Yes, and I'm with you, right? I like Nick Scorton quite a bit, right? I did. The NFL obviously didn't feel the same way.
No, it didn't.
Right? Because he goes, 51?
Yeah.
And so, now the Panthers did trade up to get him at 51. But, this was a situation where he was a guy that dropped pretty significantly. And so for whatever reason, they didn't see that. I will say, first of all, Tyler Shaw going, or whatever the hell his name is, going 40 is complete lunacy. Just absolute
Tyler
lunacy.
Shaw? Yeah.
Tyler Shaw, right. Just the stupidest pick of the entire draft.
Well, and this is the Saints being where the Saints are right now, which is very funny.
Correct, yes. And then the Bills trade up to 41 for TJ Sanders, which he's another running back too, is he not?
He's just defensive tackle, 3 tackles.
Oh, I'm thinking of Raheem Sanders from South Carolina. Never mind.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the thing and I'm like, wait a second. But never mind.
I want to address a comment here real quick, by the way. Somebody said I contradicted myself by saying that this pick made the team better, but I'm disappointed with the draft pick. They're not contradictions. Whoever you're taking at 38 should be making the team better. Correct. I think they could have taken someone that made the team even better than what Trevin Henderson brings to the table. And I think part of that too here is that Henderson's a guy with his injury history, being a guy who's been banged up a couple times, who's had a lot of carries. There's a real chance he ends up being a good player for you, but someone who plays in New England for 4 years. And if you're going edge there, if you're going receiver there, if you're going tight end there, heck, even if you're going guard there, you're going to get a guy who should be at least a 2-contract player in New England if they pan out the way you expect them to. And being able to get that kind of impact for 7 to 9 years instead of 4 years is also something. We just went through this in free agency. 2 years in a row, the Patriots have had the most money going into free agency, and then we get there and it's like, oh man, all the good players got re-signed because you have to draft them.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, you either want to have that eye for the future here too.
Yep. And listen, Nelson mentioned the ball control and how he only fumbled twice his career and everything like that. And not all that is true.
Yeah. Love Henderson as the player.
Yes. And that's the thing, is that ultimately what it comes down to, and this is really I agree with you in the fact you could have gotten more. I will say I'm very excited about him as the player. And so I saw the vision behind it. I get it. And I do think that because the edge class is so deep, that I think passing on an edge in that moment was okay. And the wide receiver class is very deep. And so passing on a wide receiver in that situation as well. And so
but it's a deep running back class too.
You're right. But I don't think, I will say, I think that Kyle Williams is a lot closer to Luther Burden than any of the other running backs were to Travion Henderson. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong about that. That's my personal opinion.
We'll see.
But we'll see.
I will say with Henderson, one thing that could be fun if they get into some read option action, I think that'll be a good time. One thing, I think the idea of putting 2 running backs on the field at the same time is something that gets a little bit overrated sometimes because the guys, at least one of them has to be truly special to make it happen. But the fact that Henderson can be a receiver and can be a blocker, and that Ramondre Stevenson can do some of that same stuff too, I think there might be a little more juice in the pony personnel this year if Ramondre is able to bounce back a little bit. That could give you some options there in the running game and the passing game. So that could be interesting. One area where I do like Henderson gives you stuff on passing downs, which is good.
Right.
I forget. I think it was Pat's chat that was saying that I think it was the Pat's chat show. They were saying you just got to hope that this is he ends up being more Jahmyr Gibbs is a player than Shane Vereen. Shane Vereen's a good player. If you're drafting Shane Vereen at 38 overall with the other needs on this roster, that's bad decision.
Not great. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So, all right, let's go. Let's move on to the next pick here. Dun, dun, dun. Round 3, pick 69. Nice. Kyle Williams, wide receiver from Washington State. I loved this pick. You did not. And really what it comes down to for you is you had Jalen Noel over Kyle Williams. I had Jalen Noel and Kyle Williams in the same tier of receiver. And so that's why I like the pick. I'm happy they took one of them. You like Noel significantly more. I know that there's a lot of people that like Noel significantly more, and I get it. I think that Kyle Williams is the best separator in this class, man-to-man separator in this class, and the Patriots have not had a man-to-man separator, a true man-to-man separator, not just a slot only, a true man-to-man separator since Brandon Cooks in 2017. It's been a long time for the Patriots to say, go ahead and play man coverage against us because we have this guy that can beat you every time. And so that's an issue for me. I love it. And, TD says it, and multiple people said it as well. I think he reminds me of Diggs a little bit. Steve Smith said that he reminds him of him. By the way, the last time that he said it, a guy reminded him of Steve Smith. It was Jamar Chase. Guy turned out to be pretty good. So I'm not saying that Kyle Williams is going to be Jamar Chase, but I do think it was really interesting that Steve Smith said that.
I don't know what Steve Smith is smoking on that one. It's what Steve Smith was an undersized, thick, physical wide receiver. Kyle Williams is none of it. He's a tall, thin, finesse wide receiver. So I don't know what comparison he's making there. Forget quality of player. Stylistically, that makes absolutely no sense to me. But yeah, Kyle Williams was a guy I had as a late 3rd to 4th round pick. So I think it's a little bit of a reach where they took him, but not crazy. My issue is Noel was one of the guys I had as 5 I would have considered taking at 38. He was the 5th guy there. It was I would consider this pick then. And to pass on, I thought there was a full tiered break between those two. And I think you see it in the production. These guys produced at similar levels last season.
Mm-hmm.
Noel did it in the Big 12 and against the schedule that was pretty hard. And Kyle Williams did it at Washington State, a team not really even in a conference, playing a pretty weak schedule. And Noel's doing it, sharing his receiving room with a guy who went top 50. Right. So, I think that tells you a lot just from level of competition and production. Noel, I thought, was faster. When we talk about the locker room aspect, Noel was a 2-time team captain. He was just a great special teams player in addition to what he did as a receiver. Kyle Williams, he's better after the catch. But I went literally Friday night after we wrapped our show. I stayed up until 3 a.m. watching Kyle Williams film. I rewatched everything I could find because I wanted to go back over this to see what I was looking at. And one consistent theme I seem to see is that early in games, he seemed to be getting open. And it felt like it just took defenses a little bit to adjust their pursuit angles to the speed he brings, because he is fast. He accelerates very well. He's got great change of direction. He's a good prospect I liked, but I kind of felt like throughout games, teams started to get a feel for what his speed was, and they'd be able to make some plays on him later. He wouldn't be able to make the same run after the catch type plays. And when I see that, what I think is, okay, well, how is this going to look when he's going 1.5 tiers, 2 tiers up from Washington State to the NFL? when everybody's going to be that fast. And like, he was great after the catch. Some of those tackles that he was breaking, I'm getting N'Keal Harry flashbacks of, oh, you watch the N'Keal Harry highlights and he's impossible to bring down. And then you look at it again, you realize, okay, none of these guys know how to tackle. And that's why he's getting all these yards. And it's a very different type of athlete with Kyle Williams. But I definitely thought there was a little bit of that with him after the catch. And then my other concern is his hands. You know, there was a game that he dropped a ball going out of bounds that could have given them the opportunity to get a Hail Mary to try to win a game. And ball comes right into his hands and he volleyball sets it right up in the air, can't corral it, goes out of bounds. And part of the reason they lose. And he has very small hands. Like, this is different from the Tyquan Thornton pick. Kyle Williams is a better prospect, but he's still someone who gets pushed around physically. He's a thin receiver who relies a lot on his speed. And he has very small hands, under 9-inch hands, which is concerning.
All right. I mean, listen, you have your opinion, and that's okay. Yeah. And I'm going to respect your opinion. I'm not going to talk down to you. I'm not going to do that. I disagree. I will also say that my guy Isaac Tisla went the next pick after, which I thought was awesome. I love Isaac Tisla.
Great for him. Absolutely.
I mean, I thought it was insane. I thought it was insane. They took him at 70. But I love the kid, but I thought it was insane they took him at 70.
That made no.
Nevertheless.
I think when our reaction was like, that's the Lions get a little high on their own supply there. That does also feel like Jameson Williams, what do you call it? Like insurance package?
Yeah, maybe.
They're like, okay, we know how to use Jameson Williams. We're gonna go get another athlete that we can plug into some of this stuff. And speaking of the Jameson Williams comparison, I will say that there's like that to me is the ceiling for what Kyle Williams can bring when you look at, thin receiver with, what do you call it? Who can just destroy pursuit angles with his speed and acceleration. I do think the floor is relatively high for Kyle Williams as a gadget guy. I do think he can still make people miss. I think you can put him out there and give him some design touches and scheme touches year one and get him involved and stuff. And he can separate against man. Just, concerned about that level of physicality bump up to the next level there.
And we'll see, and some maybe got to send him in motion or, flex him inside and things like that. So, but we'll see. I like the pick. I know you didn't, and that's okay. And time will tell if you're right about Jalen Noel or not. Texans take him, so they have Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. So that was interesting. I loved Higgins as well, but he obviously went really early. So, all right, next pick. Still round 3, still day 2, pick 95. A trade back, the second trade back, 2 trade backs for the Patriots. Pick up an extra 5th round pick this year, and then a 4th round pick next year to move back a total of 18 spots. And they get Jerry Wilson, the center from Georgia. And this one, we're in agreement on. We love this one.
This is a awesome pick. Great athlete. We'll see if he's going to be technically ready year 1 to be a starter. But the upside with him is so high, and the ability to pair a center with Drake May and build that relationship too, I think is big in the middle of that offensive line. And his ceiling is someone who can be a real weapon for you in the running game, which is, they need those guys. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And Elliot Wolf mentioned right after the draft that he could have some guard flexibility, some position flexibility to potentially play guard. I thought that was fascinating. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, but I thought that I liked that quite a bit. And so, maybe he plays guard and Garrett Bradbury plays center. But what are you going to do? So,
and I think they're just gonna play him. Like I think it was a plus that he has the versatility. I think they're just gonna play him at center, just the way the roster looks.
That's what I think is going to happen. That would be my assumption, at least, right? I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but that would make the most sense. And I think Garrett Bradbury probably just gets cut. But you never know. I guess we'll see what happens when you get into camp. But
and if depending on how it goes, if Bradbury is a high character guy who's willing to buy into a backup role
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
then because that was, this was an issue we saw last year is that when guys got hurt, the next level guys were not ready for it. And if, Wilson wins the starting job and Bradbury can be your backup, I think you're much better at the center spot than you were last season. And then, also we see what happens with Jake Andrews and Ben Brown. If you can do any development there, what that turns into.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. That's a great point. Having a guy like Bradbury on the team, even in a backup situation, I think makes a lot of sense. And so, we'll see what happens. So, all right. Do you want to do a quick ad break and then we'll continue with day 3?
Yeah, you want to talk to the people?
Let's do it. All right, this ad, of course, is for Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000. Yes, that's right, 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Cash into the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, or all 3. Take your pick of more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Take your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round, which of course has already happened. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the takes to tickets sweepstakes, which could get you a +1 VIP trip to the ship to the finals. Hello. That'd be pretty nice. And so one of my favorite aspects of Prize Picks, one of my favorite features of Prize Picks, is to let you mix and match the sports as well. So you can get in on playoff basketball, and you can get in on playoff hockey, and you can get in on baseball, and you can do all of those things in the same ticket, in the same lineup, which is a lot of fun. So, and again, they do Venmo, they do Apple Pay, they do MasterCard. It's easy in, easy out. It's fantastic. So what you're going to do, oh, and don't forget, every Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, so a little bit lower on the numbers that you have to hit for Tuesday, and usually by about 15-25%. And then on Friday, there's Flex Fridays as well. You can flex play a lineup and get that money back in promotional dollars if that lineup does not win. So what are you going to do? Download the app Prize Picks, put in the promo code CLNS. You're going to get $50 off when you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, don't have to win, just have to play it. So download the app Prize Picks, put in the promo code CLNS, and you get $50 off your first you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. On to day 3. I felt really good. I felt really good about what they were doing with the consensus board. I felt really good about it. And then pick 106 comes across the board, and it's Craig Woodson, safety from California. And I was like, who?
Yeah, this was, and people did not like my immediate reaction to this. That this felt like a Bill Belichick draft with the short arm tackle. We've seen that with Isaiah Wynn. You've got drafting a running back higher than people expect. That happened a number of times with Bill Belichick drafting. You've got drafting a wide receiver who might have been a little bit of a reach compared to other ones on the board. That is something we saw him do. Center, that's typical. And then really putting the cherry on top there by drafting a safety that no one's ever heard of. This is tough for me because my initial reaction is, okay, it's never great to reach this far in a safety. I'm getting Jordan Richards clips in the Super Bowl playing into my head immediately.
Yep.
You read more about Craig Woodson, the player, and you do, it's curious why he was seen so low on consensus boards. I do think that the safety is probably the position that the press is the worst at evaluating because it's almost impossible to evaluate it without talking to the coaches about what they're asking their safeties to do.
Correct.
And Woodson has astoundingly high PFF grades. He tested well at the combine. Really the only negatives, he's not quite as great of a mover on tape as he is based on some of his testing, and he's old. I mean, he is, what do you call it? Old enough to be Bill Belichick's girlfriend. So like, yeah, he played with Jalen Hawkins at Cal. Jalen
Yeah,
Hawkins was drafted in 2020. Like
it's
he's
not
been in
ideal.
college for a while, but he's experienced, a good player. I think he steps into that third safety role right away. I think. So excited for the player, and I never like a reach, but I think this one has some justifications for it.
Well, and I look, I felt the same way. I mean, listen, I gave it a D, right? I think I gave it a D plus. But it's one of the interesting things that you look at it, right? And Daniel Jeremiah kind of said it on the broadcast. Like, I kept trying to come up with things that weren't good about this kid, and he's not too fast, and he goes out and runs a 4.45, and he's older, and it's like, oh, at a certain point, like, he's just a good player, right? And Eric Alco, who, listen, is biased, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But per PFF, his 2024 season was one of the best seasons a safety has had in the last 5 years. He finished with an 85 plus coverage and 85 plus run grade in 2024. One of the 5 people to do that since 2020. His ideal size frame, explosiveness, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But that part of it is interesting. What's interesting to me is that when you get one of those guys that you find, right? And listen, Deron Harmon is a name that, and we talked about this off the air about Deron Harmon, but the biggest thing for me about Deron Harmon, when you talk to people that know what they're talking about, right? Deron Harmon says, or they say Deron Harmon was arguably the most, or one of the 3 most important people on that defense, because what he did was allow everyone else to do what they were doing. And he was always in the right position to make the play that he needed to make. And that allowed everyone else to do what they were doing. And then Deron Harmon would go over and make the interception and seal the game. And that's just who he was and what he did. And so I don't know if this is a Deron Harmon type pick, but if this guy turns into a Deron Harmon that, listen, Deron Harmon wasn't a Pro Bowler. He wasn't all pro. He didn't get the media accolades that other people got. Felgram has screamed about him every day at 2 to 6. Oh, this guy sucks. Why is he still playing? And then the Patriots would just, oh no, okay, we'll give you a 3-year extension. Oh, we'll give you another 3-year extension. And he just kept playing for them. And then he went to Detroit, and he played really well in Detroit. And so when he was one of those guys that turned into a dependable player for you, if you get that at the top of the 4th round, even with the other things that are available, it turns into a good pick. Again, there's a lot of question marks there. And the consensus isn't always wrong. And so I hate going so far against consensus. We talked about he was like 188 or something like that, and you drafted 106. Yeah. So I don't like it, right? But again, if they're right and they get it, great. If they're wrong, then that's when you say, well, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? And so, but I can see, at least after reading some of the stuff, after hearing some of the things that people say. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah was on part of my take before the draft. And they said, who are some late round guys that you think are better than projected? And he said, Craig Woodson. Like, this guy's going to be starting next year. Like, no one, he's like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, he's going to be a starter day 1. And so, if that's true, it's one guy, right? That doesn't mean anything. But if that's one guy and that guy is right and the other guys are wrong, well then, hey, there you go, But it's risky just being like that one guy and us are right and everyone else is wrong. I don't like doing that.
Yeah, and there's some, in some ways this reminds me a little of like Marty Mapu a couple of years ago, where he was one where the league was kind of always higher on him than the consensus boards. So he ends up going in a spot that looks like a reach compared to where outsiders have him. Has that worked out for the Patriots?
Right.
So,
Right.
not really. And Mapu's had some moments on tape, and I really liked that pick at the time because I liked the tape. It hasn't translated for him.
Yeah.
I will say I think Cameron makes a good point here. Multiple safeties taken later in the round. So, reading the board well, which I will say, I do think that all in all, the Patriots did a fantastic job of reading the board, moving around the board, and making trades on Thursday through Saturday. And my guess is that, I think Elliot Wolf's knowledge comes in handy there big time. That's an area of this where he's a lot of experience. And then when they have like John Stretcher in there and Ryan Cowden, like my guess that's what some of those guys are doing. Stretcher in particular, because he's like an analytics guy. Yeah. I'm guessing in every single one of the trades they made on draft day, by the way, by the Rich Hill chart, was either a net neutral value or a positive for the Patriots.
Yeah.
So
doesn't surprise there. And they made a bunch.
Yeah. Woodson, by the way, so he had 8.83 RAS, great broad jump, great 40 time, especially for that size, and because he's a 6-foot safety. And his PFF grades this year, so he has an 88.5 overall for defense. That's very, very high.
Yeah.
85.6 for run defense, 84.1 for tackling, 88.6 for coverage. So he's doing, the only thing he's not doing is rushing the passer, and that's fine because it sounds like a guy you want playing away from the line of scrimmage.
Right.
So, all right, and they needed a free safety. So it just seems like this is someone the league was higher on than the press. Does that mean the league is right? Not necessarily, but I think it makes the pick a lot more understandable. And I don't remember what my initial grade on this was, but after doing a little bit more research on him, I think I was negative. I think I would soften my negativity on that and probably raise that grade a little bit more in hindsight.
Yeah, I might eventually, I'm kind of same way. I might have gone to like a C- or something like that, but I still didn't love it, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
All right, so this next pick, you had a perfect segue into it because you talked about the trades and reading the market and reading what was going on, and this is exactly what happened with the Patriots. They took 144, they added in their 7th round draft pick at 238. I'm sorry. And they moved up 7 spots. And at 137 in the 4th round, they took Joshua Farmer from Florida State. And then as soon as they took Joshua Farmer, a bunch of defensive tackles and defensive linemen went off the board right after that. And so that was one of those ones where they saw the run coming, they anticipated it, and they traded up to beat that run. And they gave up a late 7th round pick to do it. They didn't really give up anything to move at those 7 spots. And so that was really big for them. I love that trade. I love this player. I think that he's a good run stopper, but really what he is more than anything else is a penetrating defender. He's a penetrating 3-tech. And for me, that's exactly the type of guy that you're trying to build. This is what you're doing on defense, is that you want these defensive tackles that attack the other team, right? We're not sitting back two-gapping like we were with Belichick. We're attacking the other team, and we want to penetrate up the field. That's what we're trying to do. And if that's what you're trying to do, you want as many of those guys as you can get. So you have Milton Williams, and you have Christian Barmore, and now you add Joshua Farmer into that. And I'm a big fan of that. And so I thought this was a great pick.
Yeah, no, I love this. As a guy, if they took him at 69, I would have been very happy with that. So getting him this far down the board, I think, is fantastic. 46 pressures over the last 2 seasons. And, Daniel Aquale is someone no longer with the team. This, I think, immediately fills that role. At least you're hoping it does. Year 1, obviously, is a day 3 pick. Sometimes those guys just don't pan out.
Right.
But if he works, if he is the player you think he is, year 1, he can be your 3rd defensive tackle who's going to rotate in and allow you to keep Milton Williams and Christian Barmore, if he's healthy, fresh.
Mm-hmm.
We obviously saw in the Super Bowl how important it is to have a rotation on the defensive line to keep everyone fresh and just have waves that you can send after the opposing quarterback. And Farmer can be a big part of that. I think athletically, he's a guy who can be a starter in this league on his rookie contract. By the end, it can be a quality starter in this league. But I think the floor is high enough that if he's, especially this pick, if he just ends up being a role player, pass rushing defensive tackle for you, he should be good enough at that to get a second contract with the team and carve out a role in the league and, play in the league for 8 years.
Right. And that's that you can't ask anything more than 137 in the draft, and so I'm a big fan of it. I like it quite a bit, and again, it's exactly the type of player that you're looking for. Now, again, as you said, he's a day 3 pick. Like, maybe he'll work out, maybe he won't. But, when you start looking at your defensive line and you say, okay, we have Christian Barmore and we have Milton Williams and we have Keon White. And I know Keon White's an edge, but Keon White is going to play inside at times as well, certainly as a pass rusher too. And so, I think you start to look at the depth that you have there and you start to say, like, okay, I like what we're doing here. And you're not trying to build exactly what Philadelphia did, because you really can't replicate it. Like, if you're trying to replicate what people did, like, you're never going to be as successful because they do it better than you, right? But the thing for me is that you see what works, and so you're saying, all right, we can do some of those things as well. And so I think having a bunch of bodies you can throw on the defensive line is really important. And so I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, well, and it's one of the ways you get like the Eagles, where it's not just by throwing your first round picks to the defensive line. It's about finding those guys later in the draft too, so that you have that depth. Like Milton Williams, he was a 3rd round pick.
Yep,
he was picked 73. Obviously, this is later, but like Farmer was rated. Where was he rated on the big board?
He was rated 80, in the 70s.
89 is what
89. Okay.
Yeah, but 70s, 80s consensus 3rd round player. Not all that far off from where a guy like Milton Williams was rated. If he ends up being Milton Williams level good, obviously you're going to be ecstatic about that. He doesn't have to be, though, to justify it. They got one of the reasons Milton Williams is in New England now is because the Eagles have other guys they drafted at similar spots in the draft that they have developed and feel comfortable replacing.
And they did it again this year too. Those bastards. They had an incredible draft again this year. They just And who knows? Obviously, we'll see if the guys pan out. But I loved their draft this year.
And we talked about the run on safeties. Andrew Makuba is the guy we talked about wanting to come to New England. He is somebody you'd be looking at a pick 69, 77, 106, somewhere in that range. I think he came off the board before 69.
I believe he was the last pick of the 2nd round. I believe. Yeah,
and that's just an immediate light bulb goes off. Philly, this fit makes perfect sense.
They signed Holland Pierce as a UDFA. And I'm like, well, Holland Pierce is going to be. I think I had a conversation with someone. They were like 10-year vet, like guaranteed. Like, it's just. Like, it's a guy that big who can move. Like, what the hell,
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna do?
Speaking of the Eagles, if I can segue us to our next selection here?
Let's do it.
Patriots add Braden Swinson, edge rusher from LSU, pick 146. I was doing a little analysis earlier because I was curious about it. I was just going through old drafts and consensus board stuff, just trying to find okay, who's similar. By position, based on where they were ranked to who the Patriots got. Mm-hmm. So I plug in, Braden Swinson's a guy who was ranked 68th by the big board. The Pats get him in the 140s. I'm like, all right, who are guys rated around there who were edge rushers who ended up falling? Yeah. Well, there's one guy who was rated very similarly, who was also picked in a similar range, and that's Josh Sweat by the Eagles in 2018. Sweat was 57th, picked 130, so, similar fall there. And Swinson apparently has some coachability issues, I think is how it was phrased, which Elliot Wolf said they got to go to practice with him and see him there, and that's one of the reasons they felt comfortable making this pick. It's a very athletic, very quick player who's a talented edge rusher who I think, you're hoping he fills that Joshua Uche role in year 1, and if he learns from Harold Landry, could be a starter in year 2.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, he's got some work to do. He's terrible against the run. But, I think that even though he's terrible against the run, so what? Who cares if he's terrible against the run? That doesn't matter because he's a pass rusher. And so you can develop that run, that setting the edge and things like that. But I want them to be able to rush the passer. And, and he's a guy that I think can do that. And I mean, obviously you can see, you see it on film that he's just, and it's not just, Keon White uses his physicality and just the fact that he's just better than people. He just dominates them, which is why he's had a hard time in the NFL because he just can't dominate guys the way that he could at Georgia Tech. He doesn't really have a plan. Swinson has a plan. He has real moves. He has a bag, right? He has counter moves. And, and I think that's really, that makes a difference. And I think, I'm excited to see what this kid can do. And that's the thing. And TD kind of says it right here too, that he's raw and he needs teaching. And I think Farmer's a little bit raw as well. You take a guy like Vrabel and Terrell Williams, who are great defensive line coaches, and you put those guys in this system, with guys like Milton Williams and Harold Landry and Christian Barmore, guys that can learn from, and all of a sudden you're looking at saying like these guys we can develop these guys into really good players as well. So
yeah,
so I'm excited about that.
When you look at some of the numbers for Swinson, he had 60 pressures last season.
Yeah,
60.
Crazy.
That's insanity. It's like, I think he is still a little bit raw, but he knows how to win as a pass rusher. And the real concern with him is just play strength and size. He's a smaller guy,
right?
So if it doesn't necessarily translate, he's someone who's not going to bring a lot to your team. He's not going to be the greatest run defender, and he's not someone that's going to push the pocket. So if he's not winning with his move, he might not be a positive for you at all on a pass rush rep. But like, this is a guy who's talented enough as a pass rusher that he was rated as a top borderline second round player by a lot of people.
Right.
You're getting him in round 5. Like, that's just, and I'm going to guess that's coachability. Like, I feel like it's got to be. So maybe those concerns are worse than we thought. But, this is where the hiring of Mike Vrabel is a big deal. It's great to be drafting players like Will Campbell who can be a pillar for your team, where having the great coaching in that locker room then pays off is when you can take guys who are risks, feeling like you have a better chance of making it work than other teams do. And that's where teams like Philly add value all the time. They're able to make moves like that because they trust in their culture and what they're doing internally to make the most out of those situations. And Pat's taken one of those moves here. I love this pick. I think I gave out 3 A+ in this draft, and it was this Farmer and Jared Wilson.
Yeah, I was a big fan of this one too. I think I only gave out 2 actually, to be honest with you, and it was this and Jared Wilson. So that's how I felt about it, and I think it's we're in a good spot with this. All right, let's.
Can I? I want to make one last point on this before we do this, because I was going through just like the depth chart today, seeing how things are going to play out, and we've talked a lot about like how guys fit into this roster. One guy there's kind of been a general assumption about is that Keon White, they're going to get the best out of Keon White from a personality perspective. They seem like they want to play a 3-4 front. If they're playing a 3-4 front, I don't think Keon White fits in that. So I'm very curious what his future is going to look like, because I don't want Keon White dropping into coverage. And I also do not want him playing over the guard as a run defender.
I agree with you. But I will say if they run a 3-4, Swinson doesn't fit in either. He's not a 3-4 end. I guess you could put him an outside linebacker in just rushing situations.
He'd be a 3-4 outside linebacker. And like that's kind of what Landry is. But they also, Vrabel's also run like the 4-3 over, which we've seen the Pats do, which is like one side you're going to have a 4-3 end and a 4-3 D tackle, and the other side it's going to be a 3-4 D end and an outside linebacker. So they might have, Keon White on one side as a D end hand in the dirt, and Landry or Jennings or Swinson or whoever as a stand-up edge on the other side.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
So
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I don't know, and Taylor Lewan said it when Vrabel was hired, but like, no one's job is safe. Like nobody's job is safe. Like you gotta come here and prove that you deserve a spot here, and I don't care who it is, Keon White, Ramondre Stevenson, friggin' Drake May. It doesn't matter, dude. Like, come in and prove that you belong here, or you're gone. And I think that's the way you have to run things, especially when he's the new guy here. And he's trying to kind of build this, culture and this team. That's the way to do it. So, so we'll see. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. And there's going to be a lot of intrigue this training camp, I think.
Yes, I agree. And I will say, I think we're going to talk about some guys who might get pushed off the roster after the commercial break here.
Yes, we are. So go ahead, Matt.
All right. I'm here to talk to you guys about game time. And I got my Celtics hat on. Celtics getting the win tonight. They have a chance to clinch against the Magic on Tuesday at home at TD Garden. You want to go to that game. Who doesn't want to go to a clinching game in the NBA playoffs? Celtics going for banner 19 right now. And you want to use Game Time to make sure you're there and loud. The Celtics are trying to make this run. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for these hard-to-get playoff seats, and prices will go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With last-minute tickets and zone deals, that really helps to get low prices for these games. It's easy to find tickets. We're just going to go into the Game Time website or to the Game Time app, search for the Boston Celtics. That game is going to come right up for you. With the last minute deals, you're going to be able to save up to 60% off last minute for, obviously the Celtics game, but also trying to go to other games, trying to go to concerts, comedy, a theater show, you want to go to a musical. Game Time is going to be able to help you with all of that. And with all-in pricing and seat views, it's very easy to know exactly how much money you're going to pay and exactly the experience that you're going to get from your seat at the game. Highly recommend it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right. Now we get into the fun part of the we get into the fun part of the draft. Round six. After a trade back, they had 171. They traded back from 171 with Detroit. Oh, by the way, one thing about Braden Swinson, the Swinson trade, or the Swinson pick, came from a trade back from pick 77. And so that, of course, was the Matthew Judon trade. And I hope they do what they did with Jimmy G, which is they just keep trading back and picking up more picks because that was so much fun. But this one is now for Matthew Judon. You have acquired Jared Wilson, Braden Swinson, and a fourth-round pick next year. So pretty good so far. Now, again, they haven't played a game yet, but if you feel pretty good about what they've gotten back from him, especially when the Falcons liked Matthew Judon so much that not only did they take an edge in the first round, but they then traded a first-round pick in next year's draft for another edge in the first round this year. So that's how well he worked out there. Yeah,
they traded what was left of Matthew Judon for 3 chances at quality players.
Right, exactly.
And two of these picks, I think they nailed based on the board. And I will say, it's worth mentioning, we talk about some of these guys, especially at this point. We might really like a pick based on the way the board fell. Braden Swinson's still an edge who was supposed to go in the second or third round. Those guys fail all the time. Joshua Farmer, defensive lineman, who's supposed to go in the third round. Those guys fail all the time.
Right.
I think we on here loved one of the picks we all loved last year was the Javon Baker pick because that was a steal at that point in the draft. It still hasn't worked out. Like that's the nature of this thing. You can do things right. You can play the game that is the draft the right way and have the players just not be that good. Which is one of the reasons why trading back and maximizing your number of attempts here can be very, very helpful.
Agreed. So after a trade back from 171 in the 6th round, they do draft Andy or Andres Borregales, a kicker from Miami, at 182. And look, it's a kicker. I mean, it's a kicker, right? Like, it's a kicker. And so were there other needs that they could have addressed at 182? Yes. Were there other players that I think were draftable at that point? Absolutely, I do, right? I also think they didn't have a kicker. They met with a billion kickers, and clearly they were getting a new kicker. That was happening. John Parker Romo's still on this team, and so I guess he'll battle it out in training camp or whatever. But Borregales has the leg. He doesn't have the strongest leg in the class, but he has a strong leg. He is very accurate, and he's very professional. He has a really good. The operation looks good. And I think Mike Leonard said that he was the second most impressive person at Miami's Pro Day, which I thought was interesting. And so, look, it's a kicker. I didn't love it, right? I think I gave it a B- because ultimately, like, I get it and I like the kicker, but he's a kicker. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, like fine, but sure, you got the best one, I guess, so that's good.
All right, here's a list of every kicker taken in the top 200 since 2015. We've got Roberto Aguayo. They're sorted by how high they were picked. Roberto Aguayo lasted 1 year in the NFL.
Yep, not good.
Jake Moody, who is entering year 3 for San Francisco after an awful second season.
Not good.
Truly awful. Chad Ryland, no explanation needed on that one.
Not good.
Cade York for Cleveland, who has been an okay kicker who has bounced around a lot. He was out of Cleveland, I think, the next season. Matt Gay by Tampa, he was out of Tampa, I believe, the next season. Evan McPherson by Cincinnati, he's still with the Bengals. He had a rough year last year, though.
But he's been there he's been a good kicker for multiple years.
He was a good kicker for the first 3 years there. Jake Elliott, which is funny because you might think, oh, Jake Elliott, good kicker. Drafted by the Bengals, did not make the Bengals out of camp, was signed to the practice squad, and then immediately signed by the Eagles, where he'd been ever since. They evaluated that he was a good kicker properly in the draft, and then did not do it in camp as a team.
So dumb.
Yeah. Justin Rohrwasser, no explanation needed. Daniel Carlson, guy who's been a good kicker in the league, but who has bounced around a lot. Austin Siebert, who bounced around a lot. Tyler Bass, who's been with Buffalo his whole career. Look at these guys, and it's just a total mixed bag on what you're getting.
Yep.
So, I personally, for approach for this season, I probably would have re-signed Joey Sly and then signed one of the guys either out of the UFL or one of the guys who's undrafted this year. I like Borgales. He seems like a good kicker. We also no one at all seems to be good at actually being able to tell who will be a good kicker in the NFL, who was a good kicker in college. It seems like a total crapshoot. So, and I think the opportunity cost here is low. I don't think they passed on a great player to draft a kicker.
Yeah.
I also think the odds are pretty low that Borgales is going to be a Patriot in 2027.
And that's a fair point. Yeah. What I will also say, and Nikhil, thank you for this because this was coming anyways. I think that this was the spot that they were looking at, maybe drafting a backup quarterback. I think that this is kind of that spot where it makes sense. Hey, 6 rounds but I don't know. Backup, would you have been more happy with a backup quarterback than a kicker? And that's I look at it and say, not really. Sure, we have a backup. First of all, we have a backup quarterback. Second of all, I'm looking at it saying, nah, we don't need. Sure, they signed one because he's training camp fodder and he'll be on the practice squad or whatever. But I didn't need a quarterback. They need a kicker, and so I would have preferred that they had signed one, UDFA. But I understand. I understand drafting one here in the 6th round. I don't love it, but I understand it.
I think the thing that stands out to me is that I think this would have been a good position to double dip it running back.
Fair.
Devin Neal went a couple of picks later. That's someone that I liked. He went to the Saints. And then Clell Mullings actually gets drafted by the Titans. Mullings in particular I thought was going to be a guy Vrabel would love and I think would complement what they have well. So, I think I'd rather have a guy who would be your running back 4 over a kicker pick, just because I think you can probably get a kicker who is just as good without the pick. But, it's not. It's pick 182. I'm not going to complain that much. I just don't love the process.
Yep, I agree. We're in agreement on that one. So, all right, next pick, round 7 into round 7, pick 220. Pick 220, and that, of course, is big Marcus Bryant from Missouri. And listen, this is the plan all along, Matt. You wanted a tackle from Missouri that would play left tackle, and we got a tackle from Missouri that would play left tackle. Not the one you were expecting, but what a value at pick 220. This guy was not on anyone's draft boards, not on Arif Hassan's top 300 consensus board. He was the 36th tackle in the Beast, which means his name was there, but there was no write-up. He's just not that good. He's not that good. He's okay. He's got good size, good long arms, but like he's just not that good. And so I understand wanting to take another tackle, and it's the 7th round, so I don't hate it. Um, but again, it's like, all right, like whatever, dude, take a flyer on him, and you know you ensure that the guys that you saw last year will never play tackle for you ever again, right? Vadarian Lowe will still probably be your backup, but like all the other bums that were out there, who the hell was the right tackle that was playing? I can't.
Jacobs.
I've etched out his name, I've just erased it
Erase
from my
that.
mind. Yes, DeMondre Jacobs. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
See you later, DeMondre. Like you're never playing ever again. And so,
Well,
but what are you gonna do?
Bryant's a guy I kind of evaluated him at the same time as what do you call it? Armand Membu, just because I was like curious about the other tackle because he's big and you see it.
Yeah.
I thought he was a fun player. Like it's not. I didn't say, oh, that's a top 100 pick, but he was a decent player. He has never been the best pass protector. He's mobile. Like he's got good speed. He's huge. He's got long arms. He got all the size you want to tackle. He's just not very quick, and that
Right.
shows up. So there might be limitations there, but like this is a really good pick, I think, to challenge Vadarian Lowe for the backup left tackle job.
Right.
I think he's got size that you can't teach, which you're always looking for at that position. I think there's some easy stuff to see on tape why they would like him. I think this is technically a reach. This one doesn't really bother me that much.
Right.
But like,
7th round
yeah, and he's got the size to be a good run blocker too, which you do see on tape where he's useful there. So I like it. I definitely wonder if this is one where they were scouting Membu and then looked across the line and said, this guy's not bad either.
Right. And that certainly could be the case, right? And that does sometimes happen. And and you go for a guy there and you say, all right, let's see what happens. So again, I didn't hate. I think I gave it a D+ because I was just like, I don't understand. I feel like there were better tackles available if you wanted a tackle. But if that's the guy they like and he's a backup, sure, whatever. Like that's fine. And I think I will say, I think I prefer a guy like this to a developmental tackle.
Yeah.
Because he's as a developmental backup, it's like the chances of that guy ever being any good is just not high at all. The chances of this guy being like a swing tackle and a spot starter every now and again for you is like decently high. He's played left tackle for a long time. He's not great, but he's like done an okay level. He can be a backup for you. He just doesn't have the upside where you see it, where you're like, oh, that guy can start someday. And so I see taking the flyer on the toolsy guy, but I think that when you're looking for a backup, that this makes sense. So
yeah, and I like it. Like I think he can play. If you miss on this one, I think there's other tackles you could have gone with. I don't think you're going to be overthinking it too much. It's fine.
Yeah. So, all right. Second to last pick. This is the last card, though. I got 10 cards from my dad, thinking that we wouldn't need more than 10 cards. And, well, there you go. So, but at pick 251 in a trade down with Kansas City. By the way, before we even talk about this, can we talk about how in my last mock draft, I moved down from pick 220 to pick up 2 7th-round picks because I wanted two guys to talk about in the mock. But I was like, no one's ever going to do this. Why would anyone ever do that? And the Patriots literally did that with the Chiefs. So I love it. That's pretty awesome. So nevertheless, traded back with the Chiefs again. And in this case, they got Julian Ashby, who is a long snapper from Vanderbilt. He's a long snapper, right? But this is the war on, as I think you put it on Twitter, the war on the 2024 captains continues. He's the last. Joe Cardona was the last man standing, and you have to assume if you're drafting a long snapper, I know it's the 7th round. If you're drafting a long snapper, that the current long snapper is not going to be the long snapper this year. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing drafting a long snapper?
Yeah, exactly. This guy's a little bit undersized. I think he's listed at like 230. But yeah, Cardona's getting older too, which is something I hadn't really considered. I don't really know what the aging curve on a long snapper looks like. I don't know when long snappers start to fall off.
No idea.
I did think Cardona had maybe his best season last year. I thought he was really good, and you
Did
actually
he have
saw him
surgery
on.
at the end of the year?
Don't remember. I do remember him forcing a fumble, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm the fact that Cardona is getting older, I really don't have an issue with them, looking for a new long snapper. I think it was pretty clear at this point that they were done with this draft and didn't think there's a whole lot of talented players left in it, and that's why they were okay going special teams. It's a long snapper. I can't really give this one high marks because I can't scout. I can't scout it either. I can't tell you if this guy's good or bad. I have no clue.
Supposedly he's good. Someone, who was it? I don't know. One of the guys said Lance Zierlein, I think, said he was the best long snapper in the draft, but
but he was the fifth in the beast.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they do these. I don't know how and it's I feel like you feel kind of neutral on this here because we don't know enough about this front office and this alignment to have a positive or a negative feeling on their ability to draft long snappers. So we can't take any clues from their track record here to go, okay, well they're good at this. This guy's going to be good. Like when Belichick did this stuff, it was all right. Well, he knows these guys, so it's going to work. And hopefully he is good and they can earn that track record. But yeah, this guy will probably be your starting long snapper this year, and hopefully he's good at it.
You would think. You would think. Nelson also said it's about moving on from the past and making room for the future, which I think is well said. Well said. And so
clearly the goal. Which, by the way, when I did say before that I had said it was Bill Belichick drafting once they reached on a safety, the fact that then they drafted a kicker and a long snapper. This is undisputably the Bill Belichick style of drafting.
Yeah, and I think that's 100%. And look, I mean. Look, it's a long snapper. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and talk about a long snapper. I will say I was surprised by it. I was surprised that they're ready to move on from Joe Cardona because I assume that they're going to move. Because if they're not going to move on from Joe Cardona, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? If Joe Cardona's here and this guy's on your practice squad, what the hell's wrong with you? And supposedly they didn't feel comfortable that he was going to sign as a UDFA, which is the reason they did this. But what the hell are you doing? And listen, I will say that guys are on the phone. I mean, Nick Nash had signed his deal before the Patriots had picked. And so guys are on the phone, in the seventh round.
Apparently the Jaguars had an agreement with someone 2 hours before the draft. And I don't know if you saw that. The tweet then got deleted, I'm pretty sure.
No, but that's, and I think that happens, but again, and this is the thing. And listen, by the way, Nikhil says it's pick 251. Chill out. I will not chill out. I will not, because just get rid of the seventh round. Just throw it in the trash. Just throw the seventh round. Take the seventh round and throw it in the trash. If those picks don't matter, then don't even have them. Just end it at the sixth and make all the seventh round players UDFAs instead. And that, the pick is there. You have one of those things that's hey, let's see what happens. And so, anyways, whatever. But ultimately, it is what it is. So,
hopefully he's good.
And that's all that matters. I mean, as long as he doesn't screw it up, and he's a good enough long snapper, then fine.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we should have. I'm guessing however many captains Vrabel would like to have next year. I'm assuming they're all going to be new because the guys starting off last season, Brissett gone, Dietrich Wise gone, Bentley cut, Andrews cut.
Cardona almost certainly gone.
Yeah, Cardona should lose his camp battle. And then Pepper's still here, but had his captainship revoked last season.
Right.
So maybe Vrabel decides to give it back to him. I will say he's the style of player where I could see Vrabel wanting him to be a captain.
Yeah.
But they also might shy away from that given stuff last year. And, they drafted a safety. We think Peppers is safe, but we shouldn't think anyone is that safe.
Yeah, I agree. See you later, Patty. Thanks for coming through. All right, last pick 257. The Mr. Irrelevant is Kobe Minor from Memphis. I have no explanation. Zero explanation for this pick. Not one. I don't have an explanation. The kid ran a 4.54 40. He's not very big. He's not very fast. He played at 3 different schools in college. He never recorded interception. He was the 127th ranked corner in the Beast. Not the 127th ranked player, the 127th ranked corner in the Beast. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Elliot Wolf talked about this after. I thought his perspective was interesting. He said this is a 2-time transfer guy, which, this is not something we've talked about on here, I don't think, but it's been brought up that the fact that these guys transfer multiple times now is really good for the NFL, because now they can go to 3 different coaching staffs and say, how did this guy go? They can see, how did he respond to being paid? How did he respond to the distractions that come with some of this stuff? He had a little bit better info there. But apparently he was a 2-time transfer who was late transferring the second time when he came to Memphis and then got an injury. So he didn't really become a guy for them until later on in the process. Mm-hmm. They said they got to see him in practice too, and they felt really good about him, which is interesting. I do want to back this out into a bigger point about their class, which I think is interesting. So for this one, Elliot Wolf specifically cited being able to see him in practice as one of the reasons why they wanted to draft him. For Braden Swinson, they mentioned the same thing, that they got to see him in practice. For Will Campbell, they got a physical workout with him in, famously now, with Mike Vrabel, which surely factored into their decision to draft him. And when it comes to the receivers, they had Noel and Kyle Williams both in for visits, which I think they did with this. A lot of these guys actually came in for visits. They picked a lot of guys who visited that we didn't know had visited.
Yes.
But they had Noel and Kyle Williams in for visits. I think it would be a smart bet to say that they were probably deciding between those 2 guys at that point, and something that happened in that visit may have been why they went with one over the other. I think that we on this podcast have been very critical of Bill Belichick for, in 2019, using what happened on one day where you interact with the prospect to be the deciding factor. And that one was A.J. Brown versus N'Keal Harry.
Yep.
And they went with, and I think Deebo Samuel was in that too. I think Samuel and Brown visited together around the same time or something. Belichick used what happened in those interactions as kind of, the end all for the tiebreaker there. And I think it shows the risks of basing your draft decisions off of just one interaction. Now, obviously with Will Campbell, there's a lot more than that. Right. And if you're good at it, then, then it can work. But Patriots had a bad interaction with Rob Gronkowski in his visit. They drafted him anyway, because that's just one data point, and the other stuff is really, really good. And I don't think you should over-index on just one thing. I can't tell you anything. We just don't know that much about this guy. He didn't. No. He played in college for 5 seasons, no picks, 2 sacks. There's not even a lot on the stat sheet.
No. Look, I think the biggest thing is that I do think that an in-person visit is important. I think it's an important data point to have. I think that it's good to get a guy in your building and see who he is. I think that that's important. However, it is one data point. If you knock a guy down your draft board because of that, well, what you see on film and what you hear from his coaches and what you see in practice from him and all those things, if that doesn't line up, well, then maybe he just had one bad day. That happens. And so maybe he didn't sleep well the night before. Maybe he got in a fight with his girlfriend. Who knows, right? But it's one day. And so you can't really knock the guy for one day. If you're really hard, if you're making that tough decision and you're looking at it saying, hey, Kyle Williams or Jalen Noel, I'm not sure. They're almost exactly the same guy. And I love them both. And we're right there with both of them. And Noel walks in and the fit, it doesn't feel right. And Williams walks in and the fit is great and you feel great about it and you love it. Okay, I get it. I understand. You're trying to make a decision, and you're like, how the hell do I choose between the two guys that are the same guy? But if you have Jalen Noel on your board above Kyle Williams, and you have Kyle Williams below him a few spots, and then one visit goes well and one visit doesn't go so well, yeah, I don't think you should be putting that guy over the other guy.
You
And so
shouldn't.
that's
If
the
you're moving
situation that
guys,
I'm looking at. You know what I mean?
yeah. And it's tough to know with a pick like this. It's literally Mr. Irrelevant.
Right.
So,
Well, and I don't
apparently,
think this relies to. I don't think this is on this guy. I'm having the conversation in
it's the
general.
big,
You know what I mean?
it's the big picture. Yeah, like bringing it back to just this one player. Like I don't. If you're just doing that for some of these day 3 guys, and you're looking at it as this really is a premium UDFA. It's the last guy in the draft. That can be fine. But it's just one of those things that's like I don't want to. Like I'm trying to figure out how Vrabel's going to do business here, how he wants to conduct this, how they want to run things. And I thought that was notable that there were a lot of anecdotes brought up in the press conferences about their personal interactions with players, and I suspect that if that is the overarching way of doing things for most picks, then that's not going to be a good sign.
Right.
Hopefully, with someone like him who has said who has an analytics experience now with the Browns, and other guys in that front office who are also very smart. Like Vrabel's clearly a smart dude. Then I would expect that these are just tidbits that they're giving to the press, and it's not
Right.
really more than that. But we'll see. And the talk on this guy is that I think he might be like a nickel defender, hybrid safety, special teams guy. And he just might not have found a right home or played his best football yet. So hopefully they're right on that evaluation.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So, all right, that's what we got. Listen, listen. I want to talk about the Bill Belichick thing, and I want to talk about the Falcons. We're an hour and a half in. Like we can't get into that.
Can I give you a fun data point?
You can give me one fun data point. Yes.
The safety the Patriots drafted at Cal is in fact like 2 weeks older than Jordan Hudson. So Bill Belichick's girlfriend.
Oh my Lord, dude. The same age. That's wild to me. That's wild to me. Man. Whew. She's like Chris Jenner in the background, dude. That's wild. That's crazy.
Yeah.
The fact that he's 72 and she's 24 is creepy. The interview was seeing that interview and seeing them interact was really weird. Really weird.
Yeah, so. Bill with the ripped thing. And I will say, like, it's like the way, like, obviously the talk there is going to be about Jordan Hudson. I thought the way he talked about Robert Kraft in the interview was
bizarre.
Strange. Like, he made it clear that it was a mutual decision, which I think to him is saying, like, I also wanted out. Right. And it's like, I don't know. Obviously, Kraft did not handle a lot of things correctly, but also, like, publicly, the things that Robert Kraft intervened on towards the end were all things where everyone was saying, Bill, what are you doing here?
Well, and
like the way he was handling drafts, the Matt Patricia stuff.
Even if it ended poorly, even if it ended really bad and Kraft was 100% in the wrong, you worked there for 25 years. Like, he gave you your chance. He was the guy that
gave
brought
a first-round pick to go get you.
Right. Gave up a first-round pick to get you, and then said, whatever you want, man. You do whatever you want. Because that's what I believe in you so much that I want you to do whatever you want. And for that to still not be good enough,
there's two outcomes here, which is one, things with Kraft were really bad and really weird behind the scenes for a long time. Bill felt that overrides the rest of it. Or Bill is very sensitive to the documentary and some of the things that happened kind of at the end there.
Yeah. Which is fair.
Bill has every right to dislike Robert Kraft for the way things were handled and the way things went. And even if everything was above board, he's still perfectly fine to dislike him because the guy said, we don't want you anymore. And Bill's a competitor, and I wouldn't expect anything less than to say, screw you. You don't think I can do this anymore?
Right.
That's fine. Just the way he went about it and the pettiness of it is like, I feel like it's petty when Robert Kraft does it, and it's even I don't expect a lot of owners their owners. Like, I don't really have any expectations for them. Bill Belichick's like the GOAT. I do have expectations for him around this stuff.
He's the pettiest man on the face of the planet. He is the pettiest man on the face of the planet, and that's one thing that's definitely true. He's hated the Jets forever. You know, on 328, him and Jordan were wearing the Falcon Super Bowl champion shirt. It's like, you know, he's the pettiest guy on the face of the planet, and so I expect the pettiness from him, but it just came across as weird. So,
well, and I think the fact Bill is getting older, and I think it would be a real shame if this is something that can't be put to bed soon, because, you know, I think the last thing anyone wants in this is a spot where the Patriots and the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, who is responsible for all of their Super Bowl titles, are
so far
not on like speaking terms.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
That I agree.
And Bill deserves to like return to Foxborough, have a celebration, and to see a statue put up in his honor.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Kraft's been real weird about everything, but I think it's clear he does want that. And he's just a fan at heart who does not know how to process a lot of what's going on when he's trying to speak about it publicly.
Well, I think he will. I mean, you got to remember, Vince Lombardi coached the Washington Redskins. So, like, you know, is, you know, and he has a big statue in Green Bay as well. So I think that it is something that will happen. But yeah, I hope it doesn't happen posthumously. That's the big question. So.
That would be unfortunate for everyone, and you know, that's not going to tarnish a legacy, but it'll make things uncomfortable in the way they just don't have to be.
Absolutely, I agree. So, all right, that's it. We'll talk more about the Belichick thing. We will talk more about the Jeff Ulbrich situation, but we gotta get the heck out of here. So,
and the NFL rivals uniforms thing.
Oh, everyone's so excited about that. I'm sure the uniforms aren't going to be terrible at all, and they're going to be so much fun, and we're going to love them all. So, jeez, that's a conversation for another day. But
stupid.
But anyways, all right. Thanks for everyone for coming through, for watching our favorite weekend of the year. Unfortunately, it's over, but we appreciate you following us on here, on Pat's Pulpit, and everywhere else. So we appreciate that. And remember, make sure that you get in and subscribe to all the CLNS shows as well. They do a great job at all the other shows as well. And make sure you're tuning in 7:30 Monday night for a nice a nice stream raising a lot of money. So thanks for coming through. Appreciate the chat as always, being live and active, and be good to each other and go Pats.